coming about to the middle of our spring session, and this is going to be the first speech Tom has given since this year, since last year, since 2012. So Thomas Levine is going to be giving a speech called Can Consciousness Affect Matter? Recent Studies into these fields. I think I messed up your title a little bit, but maybe you can say your title one more time when we get started. So without further ado, thank you. Here we go, Thomas.
Thank you, Ethan. Thank you very much. Yes, we're going to be talking about consciousness, for whatever that is, because people still don't really know what consciousness is. Although it's been studied, science has yet to really come up with some definite answers as to what consciousness is. Now, however far science has come, what it can't do is explain some, let's say, what we call paranormal or events happening. And so what I want to do in this speech is to look at some recent amazing scientific research that has basically indicating that consciousness is something far different than what we actually think it is. Consciousness can actually be something that's not within our heads, as mechanical science would have you believe, but something that's participating in, that you can actually interact with on some kind of other level. And we're going to be looking into some scientific research that's breaking boundaries into pushing this idea forward. One of the biggest experiments was actually in quantum, well, I guess you can talk about molecular science. The question I want to ask when we're talking about can consciousness change matter? Well, let's talk about our own DNA. Can our own consciousness, and what I mean by consciousness is perhaps our emotions, our feelings and our thoughts. Can they change DNA? Now, a recent scientist in the 90s, a Russian called Vladimir Poponin, did a revolutionary experiment where he took some photons, one of the smallest particles you can get, and he made a vacuum. And this is, you put a tube and inside is a vacuum, and he put some particles. And as you can see here in the picture, the photons are moving around randomly. Then what he decided to do was take a piece of DNA, and amazingly what he found when he inserted that piece of DNA into the tube, that the photons, rather than moving in a random way, started to group around that DNA structure. And it doesn't stop there. What he decided to do, and this was totally unexpected for him, was to take the DNA strand out. And this is what happened. He wanted to know what would happen if I take that DNA out of the vacuum. And this is what happened. He took the DNA out, but the photons were still aligned in the same position for a while that they were when the DNA was in. So we can see it's now coined the term phantom DNA. And the conclusion that Poponin made was that DNA is a communicating world stuff, and it's communicating through a kind of field. There's a kind of field going on there. And when the DNA is taken out, things remain ordered. The second experiment relating to DNA is from a military perspective. The military, what they did is they took a patient and they took a swab from his cheek and they placed him in one room. And they took the DNA sample from his cheek and they went to another room. And what happened was that the military put emotional stimuli on the patient. Maybe emotional stimuli to scare the person, emotional stimuli of love, of images of love, etc., etc. And what they found was that the DNA was reacting at the same time the man was reacting to the images and to the photos that were being put forward to him. And this was faster than the speed of light. It was actually at exactly the same time. Now modern science would say, well, that's impossible because there are laws. You know, there's laws of the speed of light, and you can't go faster than the speed of light. So how can that be? Well, in fact, that Einstein's law of the speed of light is meant to be a constant, but as Dr. Rupert Sheldrake pointed out, actually even the speed of light is not a constant. That's actually changed slightly from year to year. But they put it down to a thing called quantum entanglement, which we can maybe talk about later. So here we go, we have the DNA, and there we have changes in the stimuli according to the DNA. The third one relating to DNA is an institute called the Institute of Heart and Math. The Institute of Heart and Math are an institute of mathematicians, psychologists and so on, who do experiments in and related to psychology in the heart. And what they found out, amongst other things, about the heart is actually an electrical pulse. It produces waves which are probably about 50. They're far stronger than any of the brain waves anyway. And they actually produce fields. And here is the magnetic field of the heart, which can go on and go on and go on. Now, interestingly related to this, I'll leave that up for you. Related to this, what they did is they got trained people to feel emotions and focus their attention on emotions such as love, hate, positive emotions, compassion, and they got these trained people to feel emotions of hate, jealousy and rage. And from those people they also took DNA samples, and they were analysing the DNA in real time as to what the DNA was doing. And what they found was that when the practitioner, the person, was concentrating on emotions such as love, hate, appreciation, forgiveness, etc., the DNA actually relaxed. The DNA sample actually relaxed, and when they looked at hate, jealousy, rage, actually these feelings made the DNA tighter. And they likened this to activating the DNA. So here we've got on the top, I believe, is the negative feelings, and here's the positive feelings here. So what it's saying is that basically our feelings and emotions have an impact on our DNA. They can actually change the way our DNA is shaped. And furthermore, when we're looking into how particles are developed, it's interesting to know that when quantum physicists look at a particle, now they're not seeing, like we used to see in our textbooks, this sort of solid matter which has got like a moon and a galaxy revolving around it. We're actually seeing them in terms of wave particles, like electric or magnetic waves. So we can see if DNA is being likened to waves, then our thoughts and feelings may have an impact on our DNA. Okay, so those are the three studies related to DNA. So the overall conclusion there may be, well, we have a power within our bodies that is not bound by the law in time and space. One more example, again, going back to the military example, Dr. Cleve Baxter actually took the DNA not just from a room, but the DNA was in LA, the donor was in LA, and the DNA was in Phoenix, Arizona, and the exact same responses in real time happened related to how the person felt and the change in the DNA frequency. Which means but there's something else going on there that we don't quite understand. Okay, so let's move on to part 2. Part 2 is related to can consciousness and feelings or emotions affect non-conscious things, supposedly like water, for example, and like computers, even like inanimate objects. Can our emotions even affect them? And there is some proof that they can. The first experiment, which I think maybe you're all familiar with, was by Dr. Masaru Emoto, who claims that human consciousness can affect the molecular structure of water. And how he did that is he exposed water, he put water into glasses and put different words, pictures, music, and repeated certain phrases depending on the test. And then he froze those glasses, and from then he examined the aesthetics of the water crystals once they'd been frozen. And his book in Messages of Water have got these pictures here. So here we've got a photo saying, "You make me sick, I will kill you," and we can see it's distorted, and you can see the words of peace, you know, it looks very crystalline. Love again looks great, and anger looks kind of distorted. Well, he has had some criticism related to double blinds and not doing his research in a peer-reviewed way, and that's why I haven't personally included him in some of the research I did for my masters. But nevertheless, it's an interesting idea. And just out of pure curiosity, I decided about 20 days ago to do the rice experiment. And this is my house here. And what I did is I put 2 or 3 teaspoons of each of rice, the exact same quantity, and then some water. And on them I put one which says I hate, one which says nothing, one which says I love. And what I try to do every day, this is not a scientific experiment, this is just out of curiosity, okay? So don't give me a hard time about this. But what I did is I held the hate one, and I say, "I hate you, God damn it, go." And you go yourself. And then I took the love one, I said, "I love you. I love you so much." And the other one I just ignored. And after 20 days, to be honest with you, not much was happening. But there are some slight results. Here we have so we got the hate, nothing, nothing. So this is the hate one, this is the nothing one, and this is the love one. But actually there are some slight discolorations in the hate one. Actually, if you look carefully, you've got the hate, nothing, love. There is slight discolorations here. It's going slightly darker here. Here's going slightly darker, but there's no darkness here. It's not a scientific experience, just out of pure curiosity. But if you look on YouTube, you'll see lots of these experiments. So are they all lying? I mean, I'm telling you the truth. I mean, but I'm not saying it's scientific, but I haven't cheated on it. But it's just interesting to see. But what is scientific is a couple of studies relating to scientific study relating to Princeton Engineering Anomalies Research Lab, or PAIR as it's called, which has been going on for many years. And basically what they've been doing is run by Dr. Robert Jarr in 1979, is they took an ERNG, which is a random number generator. Random number generators are in the scientific world are seen as the most accurate way to predict and to be random, basically. They just spew out loads of zeros and ones, or just this and that in a random way. And his hypothesis is that consciousness is an organizing force. So if the input consciousness into the system maybe it becomes slightly more coherent. And their test was quite simple. They just said to the person, I want you, it was just going heads or tails, heads or tails, heads or tails. I want you to try to make that machine go heads. Okay, and this is all it did. So the person mentally tried to go heads, or I want you to make it go tails. And this has been done for many, many, many years. And the research proves that the person's intention for it to go heads or tails actually has an effect on the computer's output, albeit in a very, very small way. And here we can see that the line should be going across 0, but we can see slight deviations in it. Now it's only a small percentage, but just by the fact that it's there, and because hundreds of thousands of these have been tested over many years, the statistics of it not being a correlation are less than 1 trillion to 1. So since then, actually, that's stopped now, but it does suggest that our intention can have an effect on the outside world, which, according to mechanical traditional science, cannot be so. We are in this mind; it's just in here, and that has no effect on the outer reality. So let's move on then to ask the question: Is consciousness, for whatever that is, confined to your head, or is it something that has a capacity to reach out and affect in perhaps a more group fashion? And I guess some of you have heard of this before. I put it up on of a group called the Global Consciousness Project, run by Dr. Roger Nelson and a group of other scientists from around the world. And what they do is they take these random number generators, there's about 80 around the world, I believe, between 60 and 80 around the world. And what they do is those random number generators again spew out zeros and ones, so on a random basis. And what they do is they look at world events that the community's attention is looking at, and they see, are there coherences or deviations within that random 0 and 1 output. And what they found was quite startling. What they found was that on major events, such as the famous 911, you will see a convergence of information from these network of computers around the world. Here's an example. So this is September 11, 2001. Here we got the randomness here, and here we got this massive spike. Interestingly enough, the actual event, I guess, according to Dr. Nelson, that 4 to 5 hours prior to the actual event happening, it was starting to spike. Again, no one has all the answers, but this is more food for thought about what could be going on. So he's also looked at other events around the world, and similar big events like Lady Diana's death, for example, have these spikes within it. It's when, and he postulates, is it when there's a focus of intention where everyone has a coherent thought, that somehow that's making the coherence of the computers going the same way? Who knows? But he, like to Dr. Roger Nelson, points out that actually this is a very small effect. This isn't a very large effect, but just by the fact that it's there and it's provable and has implications for science, huge implications for science. It means there's something that science can't explain. The model needs to be adapted, modified, expanded on in some way. So these old dogmas of, hey, science knows it all and there's just a few little pieces, bits in there to fill in, I personally disagree with. I think science doesn't know it all and there's still much to learn. Another anecdotal experiment which you may be interested in is the 100 monkeys experiment, which is in 1952 two Japanese scientists, researchers were studying macaque monkeys, and they were providing sweet potatoes for the macaque monkeys to see how they behave and what they do with them. And after some time, an 18-month-old female didn't like the sand. It was on an island in Japan in the 50s. Didn't like the sand and decided to wash the sweet potato. Slowly but surely, other monkeys started to follow. And then it kind of reached a critical point, let's call it the 100 point, the 99 point, where the 99th monkey, let's say, this hasn't been, actually we're not sure exactly how many, started to wash, and then the next day everyone's doing it. What's more interesting, however, is on other remote islands where they're not connected, is other monkeys started to wash their own food in the sea as well. So is that pointing to a sort of global consciousness network, or as Dr. Rupert Sheldrake from Cambridge points out, is that pointing to a morphic resonance field where we're all connected to some kind of field, evolving field, which we can all at some point tap into unconsciously. Other experiments we've done on rats, but not recently, but William MacDonald from Harvard University in the 1920s took lab rats who'd been carefully reared, and he took 15 generations of lab rats and decided to give them a test. And that test was, there was a water here and a light here with a hole which is pointing to the exit, and another hole which was dark pointing to the exit. And what he did is he wanted to see how long, oh yeah, and by the way, that light, which had one exit, which wasn't the exit, by the way, was electrocuted. So each time the monkey would go in, he'd get a little electric shock until he learned finally to go into the dark hole, which was actually the real exit. And he decided from generation to generation how long it would take these rats to realise to go into the dark hole and not the light one. This happened over a period of 15 years, 32 generations. And he found that it took on average beginning 56 times to go through, 41 times, 29, 20, to finally, when the experiment was replicated, the rats just went through the dark one, and we're actually also showing signs of a little bit of fear with the light one. Again, what does that point to? It points to perhaps something like a morphic resonance where they're picking up on this information out there from somewhere. We still don't really know. Okay, finally, let's talk on about, do we have innate psychic abilities? Modern science would definitely claim anyone who claims to have psychic abilities are either not understanding statistics, are delusional, or it's just sheer mere coincidence. But I'll ask you now, has anyone ever had a feeling of being stared at? This is quite a normal occurrence where someone feels they've been stared at and look around. And so instead of not testing it, people say they have a thing, Rupert Sheldrake decided to test it, and since then 56 studies have been taken. And what he found was that there was indeed, albeit a small difference, when they did a test to be where someone's back to them, stare, not stare. There was something like a 54% hit rate. When you're talking about 56 studies, this actually is statistically highly significant, because it should be 50. Another experiment might be, have you ever had that feeling where the phone rings and you kind of know who it is, or you were just thinking about that person? Again, you can put that down to coincidence, many people do, but it was tested, it's been tested many times in different countries around the world, and the test actually involve 4 close people who you know well, who you have emotional ties with. You give them their names, and at random, their numbers are given to the researcher. At random, the computer allocates a number for the person to ring, and they ring you at that time, and you've got to guess, just before picking up, who it is. Again, you would expect a 25% chance, because there's 4 people calling, and you only have statistically a 25% chance. But in fact, the statistics are pointing much higher. The statistics are pointing to something like a 33% hit rate, which is actually highly significant, especially as so many have been done. Coming to the end now, but let's look about telepathy. There was an experiment relating to a lot of telepathic states. Things happen when you're in a kind of subjective state. And what they did is they've got this thing called the Ganzfeld experiment, which was invented in the 1930s by Wolfgang Metzger. The architects actually were incidentally skeptics. They were because the skeptics said, "Oh, you've got to do this, you've got to do that, you've got to do it. Okay, we'll do this, we'll do that, we'll do this." And basically, respondents, the women here, was put into a into a relaxed state, a hyperbolic state they call it, where their frontal lobes are asleep. They've got ping pong balls on their head, on their eyes. There's red lights. They're listening to relaxing music, and after 20 minutes, they are the experiment starts. In the experiment, there is another person who has these 4 images, and the other person at random has one image and is trying to convey that image to the respondent. And the researcher will then tell this person, the respondent, "Okay, I want you to evoke the images you think you're getting." And then they show them these pictures, and they have to choose one. Again, this has been done thousands of times, and the hit rate is not 25%, but it's actually 32%. So again, this shows quite a lot of statistical significant information. Something I won't go too much in. The same has been done for dogs. I don't know if anyone's got a dog or a cat here, but I know I can remember my housemate saying, "Your cat knows when you're coming home. Your cat knows when you're coming home." Well, there's been research on this, and actually, dogs and cats do, according to this research, know when they're coming. Their owners are coming home. This is waiting by the window. As you can see, dogs are slightly higher. Cats are in the 40s. Cats are lower. Maybe it's the same, it's just that cats probably aren't as interested or can't be bothered, I don't know. A skeptic actually called Richard Wiseman, this was conducted in Cambridge and had been done all over, said, "Oh well, I don't believe these results." And he said, "Okay, I'll do results myself." So, and actually, the skeptic replicated the same results as were given by Rupert Sheldrake, almost to the point. So the line is when they're waiting by the window for the person. So here we go, and this is when they leave, I suppose. Again, it's pointing to perhaps the way some animals operate in terms of how birds fly, how schools of fish move. It's pointing to a kind of morphic field. Okay, so in conclusion, we've seen how consciousness can affect DNA, how our thoughts and emotions can affect DNA. We've seen how the heart has magnetic waves and that push out. And we've seen that quantum physics now thinks as a particle is not just a physical thing, but a wave or a form of energy. We've seen tests by the military, we've seen tests related to phantom DNA. We've also looked about how consciousness can affect computers and so on. And we've also looked about how there's a global consciousness network. To conclude, I guess, the thing to conclude is that, well, maybe we are in some way entangled. Where you're thinking about someone, maybe that's part of some consciousness network that you're connected to on a quantum level. You're quantumly entangled emotionally in some way to someone. Maybe that look is where the positive and negative attracts. That is that real world entanglement. We don't for sure know. But what we do know is that what I can say is the scientific bodies of evidence are now pointing to the fact that science is really in its old state not enough to explain for these phenomena, and that we need to expand and really look into incorporating all different types of disciplines, not just physics, maths. We need to incorporate psychology, we need to know about biology and other disciplines in order to understand the whole phenomenon. So inclusions, we are much more powerful than we think we are. Are we observers or participants? I think we're active participants. Thank you very much.